Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877, 1988, is a non-fiction work authored by American historian Eric Foner. This comprehensive book provides an overview of the Reconstruction era in the United States, commencing with President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and concluding with the Compromise of 1877. Foner's perspective aligns with a moderate revisionist stance, contending that Reconstruction neither amounted to an unequivocal catastrophe nor constituted a genuinely progressive endeavor to empower and enfranchise Black Americans. The book garnered acclaim and received the prestigious Bancroft Prize, recognizing it as the finest American history book of its year. While the formal Reconstruction period did not commence until the conclusion of the Civil War in 1865, its origins trace back to 1863 when President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This pivotal executive order legally emancipated all enslaved individuals in America, albeit only in theory. In practice, the Confederate States, engaged in armed conflict against the federal government, did not adhere to its dictates. However, the Emancipation Proclamation left no room for ambiguity regarding the fate of enslaved individuals in the South if the Union emerged victorious in the war. Foner also underscores significant pre-Reconstruction developments that influenced post-Civil War policies. Specifically, he delves into the Port Royal experiment of 1861 and 1862. Regarded as a potential prototype for broader Reconstruction initiatives, this experiment unfolded in southern land situated off the coast of South Carolina, within the Sea Islands. These lands were liberated by Union forces and abandoned by Confederate plantation owners. Subsequently, they were bestowed upon the approximately 10,000 enslaved individuals who remained on the islands. In partnership with various northern charities, Union officials meticulously studied these emancipated individuals, their work practices, and their way of life. This scrutiny aimed to ascertain their aptitude for cultivating productive crops in the absence of white landowners. The study's findings yielded valuable insights for future Reconstruction efforts. It became evident that while the formerly enslaved individuals exhibited an unwavering work ethic, they stood to gain significantly from access to formal education, a privilege already afforded to white Americans. Without such access, they would find themselves at a distinct disadvantage. In the year 1864, although the Civil War continued, several Southern states had effectively rid themselves of Confederate Army troops and other substantial rebellious factions. Consequently, Congress and President Lincoln found themselves embroiled in debates concerning the course of action for Confederate states in the event of their leaders' surrender. Radical Republicans in Congress championed the Wade-Davis Bill, a legislative proposal put forth by Senator Benjamin Wade of Ohio and Representative Henry Davis of Maryland. This bill mandated that a majority of citizens in each Confederate state must swear an ironclad oath, declaring their past non-support for the Confederacy as a prerequisite for reintegration into the Union. Failure to meet this requirement would result in exclusion from the Union. President Lincoln vehemently opposed the Wade-Davis bill, advocating instead for the 10% rule. His proposal stipulated that only 10% of a Confederate state's population needed to take an oath affirming their adherence to the Emancipation Proclamation to qualify for re-entry into the Union. Nevertheless, Lincoln's vision for Reconstruction faced an abrupt halt when he was assassinated in 1865, with Vice President Andrew Johnson of Tennessee ascending to the presidency. Johnson, even more reluctant than Lincoln to embrace the policies of the radical Republicans, was perceived by many as someone who did not take Reconstruction efforts seriously. He harbored the belief that Reconstruction could be completed within the year. Conversely, Foner argues that radical Republicans possessed a better understanding of the magnitude of the task ahead, encompassing the revitalization of the South's economy and the guarantee of access to essential public institutions, such as education and voting, for freed slaves. This rift within the Republican Party created a significant divide between President Johnson and the radical Republicans, spearheaded by Representative Thaddeus Stevens of Pennsylvania. By the 1866 election, Stevens' faction secured a commanding two-thirds majority, enabling them to effectively oversee the process of Reconstruction while vetoing President Johnson's ill-conceived proposals. Moreover, though Johnson narrowly escaped impeachment proceedings that could have removed him from office, his authority over Reconstruction efforts was profoundly undermined. The period from 1866 to 1868, as identified by Foner, emerges as the most productive for safeguarding the rights of freed slaves. During this time, Congress took decisive actions, including the impeachment and weakening of President Andrew Johnson, the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1866, aimed at establishing citizenship and equal treatment for all Americans regardless of race, and the ratification of the 14th Amendment, which enshrined these rights in the Constitution. Regrettably, Foner highlights that despite these admirable federal statutes, improvements in the lives of freedmen in the South were sluggish, as they confronted escalating violence and intimidation at the hands of resurgent white supremacist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, especially in the aftermath of Congress's radical Reconstruction initiatives. This violence further intensified during the Panic of 1873, an economic downturn that particularly afflicted the South. In the realm of politics, the Democratic Party gained ascendancy as the balance of power shifted away from the radical Republicans. The Democrats argued that the efforts of the radical Republicans to effectively rebuild the South had culminated in failure. The formal conclusion of Reconstruction arrived in 1877 with the Compromise of 1877, often referred to as the corrupt bargain. The fiercely contested 1876 presidential election between Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel Tilden marked a pivotal moment in this historical trajectory. To resolve the contentious election dispute, the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives reached an agreement to recognize Hayes as the president, on the condition that he agreed to withdraw federal troops from several southern states where Republicans were overseeing the Reconstruction process. The absence of these troops rendered the government incapable of enforcing the newly established legal protections for freedmen. Consequently, these states experienced unrelenting violence, intimidation, and voter suppression targeting Black Americans for decades to come. By offering a comprehensive account of the Reconstruction era, primarily through the perspective of formerly enslaved individuals in the South, Foner vividly illustrates how the well-intentioned initiatives of radical Republicans fell short of their objectives. This failure unfolded in the midst of economic downturns, political maneuvering, and virulent racial tensions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.